But today we're going to talk about two topics. First of all, one of my favorites, we added this year that wasn't a part of what we talked about last year, and that's fundraising checklist. Like, what do you need to be successful? So that's going to be our first half an hour. And then the second half an hour is kind of round two of planning. And, some of you may be expert planners. Great. You could contribute. We'll have some space for you to share some of your thoughts. But we're also going to learn from some of the different people that have done planning in the 2 years before that have done microgrants. So off we go into our first topic. All right, so this first topic, fundraising checklist. So we look at this and say, well, what is it that you need to succeed in this microgrant and generally when you're doing fundraising? Because this is a different kind of a grant, and you've already probably figured that out. Not just are we giving money, but it's that mindset of how do you build the skills and the systems and and have what you need to continue funding your incredible work that into the future. How will you take this? And that's probably one of our favorite sets of stories is when we hear back from those who've gone through microgrants and said, what I learned there, I did this year again. And so we've got multiple people that once they did this, they learned how to create a matching fundraising campaign, and they started doing that on their own. They didn't need an outside funder to match it. They just came up with their own, and they've been utilizing that. And the tools that they've been given will have helped them and will hopefully help you to be able to continue to do that in the future. So that's why we keep emphasizing, what do you need? Because we're all at different places. So we're going to talk about 8 specific things on our checklist for today. Number 1 on that checklist is donor data. So as you're preparing this month, it's looking and finding this kind of donor data that you have of people that have already given to you. So who are your donors? I picked from the last 3 years, because when Jonathan and I talk about when is a lapsed donor, it's that 3rd year. So it's looking at somebody that hasn't been giving for the last 3 years. So looking at that, you could even open it up before that if you have a tool that'll allow you to do that. But at least these 3 years, who are your donors? And then with those donors, do you have contact information for them? If you don't, we're going to talk about that. How do you get that? How much have people given? So all that information is really important so that you can start to actually think of people in some basic grouping. So if you look at your donors, go, all right, who are the recurring ones? Who are the people that give either monthly, quarterly, annually? Who are the people that are giving over $1,000 a year? We call them a major gift donor, somebody who's invested largely in finances. Maybe you have churches or businesses that are giving to you, categorize that as a group. And then those regular givers, people that don't fit any of those categories, either they're not recurring, they aren't giving more than 1,000, they're not a church or business, and you can create your own categories. Some of you will have a different set of categories. But this idea is, how do you pull together all of your donor data so that you have that to be able to move forward in some of what we're going to be doing with the microgrant. So that's really important. And then look also for the lapse givers. Who are the people that gave maybe before 2021? And do you have information and contact information about them? So these are people who've already said to you, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. I'm interested in you. I want to support you. I care about what you care about. So this month, you want to take time to pull this information together so that you have it that will help you as you take steps into phase 1 or in round 1 and round 2 as you're planning. Second thing is tracking systems. Tracking is really important. And Jonathan already noted that you're going to need to do some tracking in order to do the feedback report that you'll have to do at the end. But I will say this will probably be one of the easiest grant reports you'll ever have to complete. If you do other reports from other either a foundation, they often are going to ask you to even track spending. So we will ask you to track donors because that's what we're focused on. But many organizations, when they give money, they're saying, tell us then, how did you spend it? So you have to do some tracking. So financial tracking is really critical. Just as you're sitting here, type into the chat function, what kind of accounting system do you use? Do you use QuickBooks? Do you use Quicken? Do you use Xero? Are you using Excel spreadsheets? Are you still looking? Just type it into the chat, and that way we can kind of see what people are using. All right, Renee's using QuickBooks Desktop. I heard QuickBooks Desktop is going away, Jeremiah. I just heard that the other day, but I'll be having to shift. All right, we got a lot of QuickBooks users, so that's helpful. If you are still looking, and maybe even some, the way QuickBooks is changing, but I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a group out there that's called TechSoup, and they actually offer Quicken and or QuickBooks at a discounted price. So you might want to check some of those things out. And the idea is that when you start doing grants, sometimes you're going to have to track those grants separately so that you can do reports separately. So learning how to track grants, if you've never done that before, that is something that we're going to encourage you. And we're going to have an expert later on this month come in and talk with us a little bit about accounting for granting. So tracking systems, really important. Think about, what do you have? What do you need for financial tracking? And then in the area of donor tracking, using a CRM, contact resource management, or in the nonprofit world, they often call it donor management systems, DMS, any kind of a database that will help you track your donors and what they've given is really, really important. You can use Excel spreadsheets, and we know of an incredibly successful organization that used spreadsheets up until they had, I think, Jonathan, they hit just over $1 million in income. I don't know how she managed all of her donor things on spreadsheets.
I know
it can be done.
I feel like we should teach an online class how to track $1 million on spreadsheets. I think everybody would be interested in that. But yeah, I think it was $1 million.
We know the person who did that. I don't think we recommend it.
Yeah.
But donor tracking, these are systems that can help you really maximize your time. And if you don't have staff, they're definitely cheaper than having a full-time staff doing them. But we would say you're going to utilize this. In fact, my next slide kind of says it all. And that is, a good system shortens the road to the goal. It's usually helps you build well, build for sustainability, and, to develop yourself. So a good system, even though you might look at it and go, oh my gosh, I can't afford $100 a month or $200 a month. $100 or $200 is a lot cheaper than getting a staff person to manage that on an Excel spreadsheet. So really recommend you looking at systems. We've done some research on specifically the databases for donor management. One of the benefits of donor management, well, if you're going to use Excel spreadsheets, you can export that out of your accounting system and manage it on donors. And on this, for this particular grant, that is a very viable way to do it. We're not saying you need to start up, a CRM in the next month. But there are some very good ones that are easy to start with, especially if you have a small number of donors, that can help you build toward the future. But Jonathan and I 100% would say that it's worth investing early in a good system. So any of you, again, in the chat box, any of you have a donor management system that you're using? And then with it, if you say, yeah, I'm using Bloomerang, do you like it so far? So, you can give a thumbs up on what you've got compared to what's out there. So don't see anything yet. Anyone got something? Squarespace. Okay, that's a profile builder system. And Luke, is it helping you with donors specifically?
Yeah, because it tracks all their info and how much they're donating, times, dates, all that kind of stuff, all their info,
Great.
basic info. So it's been helpful so far.
Good. Oh, Virtuous, Jeremiah, you went for the cream of the crop. Okay, so
Yeah, it's
Virtuous
not going to be
probably,
cheap, but it's going to be good for us, I think. So, yeah.
Virtuous is one of those machines. It's big and it is got incredible capacity, and it's kind of like on our top tier best ones. You don't have to start there, but it certainly is good for the long haul. And you guys have been around for a long time. And you have how many donors, Jeremiah? Currently?
As of last year, we had 147, 148. That was just for the last fiscal year. If you're wanting total, I would have to go back and look at that. But
Yeah, no, that's good for the last fiscal year. So, you know, when you're getting a bunch, you really want to use something, and something I would recommend that is nonprofit focused, because, you know, what I've seen is people shifting from things like Microsoft. What's Microsoft's thing? I used to use it. Oh, well, can't think of it. They have a nonprofit version, but it is heavy, and it's, you know, and I've seen people use even Airtables and other things that are not specifically nonprofit focused. There are nonprofit skills that you need that are different than churches, that are different than other for-profit organizations. So really encourage you to do that. Yeah, Bloomerang is a good one, and they got bought out by not Virtuous, but Kindly. And Kindly is also a bigger one. So there's room for growth also through Bloomerang, which is a good starter and has some good tools. So excellent. So good systems also on the checklist. I would say spend some time with your system. Make sure you know how to get information out of it, that you can use it. So the next thing on our checklist is right communication channels. So fundraising is all about communication and knowing what channels work for you, what channels are effective for you. So you really need to start out by thinking, you know, what are the audiences that you are reaching, and what are the channels you're using, and how are they working? So what do you use now? Which ones have been effective to help you raise awareness of your organizations? Which ones are helping you produce donors? Not all platforms or channels of communication produce donors, and not all channels are really good at raising awareness. So email lists is one channel of communication if you have email and send it out. But the big question a lot of people ask is, how do I get more people on my email list? So raising awareness, you have to do other things. And social media is a great way to raise awareness. Not all social media produces donors. So thinking about your different communication channels, what's working, what's not working, where do you think that in this process you want to focus your communication? So, and then when you say, where do you want to focus, then you start to go into what kind of messaging will you want to create, which we're going to talk more about in the second half an hour. So this is the idea of current email lists. So when you think about, you know, your email list, you know, are you using something like MailChimp or Constant Contact? MailChimp is free. If you don't have a current email list and you have just gone, I really encourage you to look at MailChimp as a free source to kind of start pooling all of your communication together. Email lists, they go beyond just donors. This should include anyone who's ever shown, you know, they're interested in you. Someone you meet on the street, add them to your email list. How do you increase your email list? If you don't know, have any ideas, I've got a great tool that comes from, oh, what's the guy's? I call him the Fixer. I forget his first name. I should know him, but he's really well known in the nonprofit world as the nonprofit fixer. He's got a great, I think, 50 ideas how to increase your email list. If you want that, just email me afterwards and I can direct you to his website to give you a bunch of different ideas. How do you grow that? But you really want to have a current email list that you can use so that you can communicate with people about this. So this month, pull that together, look at it, update it, figure out what does that email list look like, add to it. There's some ideas of people like volunteers that care about you, family, friends, all of that. And of course, social media is a good channel. And so look at, who follows you, who shares your posts, who follows you on more than one of your social media channels if you use them, and who has never given to you before. So figuring out ways to connect with your communication systems and find out who's there so that you can grow your contacts. You can go, who else can we talk to? So this is just a little bit of ways that you can start pulling all that information from your communication channels. Get information about donors, so you're building more information about who you could talk to, and you're looking for what are the channels you want to use going forward. Well-written, layered messaging is the key to great fundraising campaigns. So all the reason for doing this and looking for these channels is so that you can develop a good communication plan for this particular campaign, as well as future campaigns that you're going to be running to keep your nonprofit going. So number 4, easy to use giving page. And we're going to talk a lot about this later this month. We have an entire focus section on giving pages. But if all of your giving for this grant, you want to go through your giving page. You want people to know what to do. Now, if some people want to write checks, they don't have to go to your giving page, but majority of your people. So you need to look at that. I really encourage you to test it. Go to your own, go in there and see what it looks like and how easy is it to get to. So count your clicks. How many clicks does it take to go from going on your webpage to actually giving? How many decisions have to be made? What was that experience like? And even there'll be some follow-up things. So this is a really good example. House of Refuge, Sunny Slope, really clear, easy giving page. You got 3 options, really easy to follow, above the fold. So there's some good examples of that. We'll talk a lot more about this later this month. But also 2 other thoughts. Look at your homepage and go, what about our giving button? Is it visible? Is it clearly visible on every page? Is it accessible? Is it make it easy for people to know how? I love this one from Hope Kids International. It stands out. It's not just on their main line where you're trying to figure out where it is. It stands out. And as soon as you hover over it, you've got some really clear options. And you can even make your matching grant one of those options, which means you would have a dedicated page for giving for this grant. Love that. Really recommend it. We'll talk more about that later. So having something visible on your website, every page, so people know how to give, that makes it easy to give. So the whole point here is easy to give, clear messaging, easy options, compelling reason to give. Again, we'll talk a lot more about that later on this month. But looking back at your giving page, really important checklist thing to do. Stories of transformed life. People give because they want to make a difference. They want to use the resources God's given them to make a difference. And if what you're doing aligns with they want to hear about how has that impacted them. So you're going to need stories to be able to share in your communication with people to say, here's an impact. Here's how we impact people. So I would say this month, collect at least 1 really good story that you want to focus on, up to 5 stories, and think about this whole pattern of what was their old life like? How did they connect with you? How did they engage with you? What changed in their life? And how is that going to make a better future for them? So if you have questions there, we have a lunch and learn on this, on storying, and then we're going to do a training in September as well. That's more of a bigger, full training in person on storytelling. But go and look at the lunch and learn on stories. It's like stories that click and stick, I think is what we called it. But there's more information on that. And we're glad to talk more with you about stories and collecting what makes a good story this month as you're prepping and gathering that information. All right, number 6, monthly donor program. This is really significant, big question here, aha moment for some of our micro granters. Is there a difference between having a reoccurring monthly gifts option on your giving page and having a monthly donor program? I'm not seeing anyone. Yes, no, I don't know. I would emphatically say yes, there's a huge difference between just having an option to give monthly and having a monthly donor program. Monthly donor programs, they create greater collective sense of impact. They have a sense of, I'm doing something bigger than myself. If you're just reoccurring giving monthly, you're feeling like you're just one person that's giving more consistently, but you don't necessarily think you're doing something bigger than yourself because it's just you giving monthly. You might be able to see someone maybe on your website that you give reasons why to give monthly because you're giving on an ongoing basis, you're regularly contributing to accomplishing what your purpose is. But having a significant, sizable, bigger than myself difference happens when you have a program of other people that are joining with you, and even creates a sense of belonging as you build that program. So again, we're going to talk about monthly donor programs, how to build that, how to name it, how to create it. Studies show that reoccurring giving is, incredible, that gives you longer term, long lasting donors. But monthly donor programs, they create champions that continue to give to you decades down the road, and sometimes become staff and some of your best promoters. So they share it with other peers as well. So just if you want to look at some really good examples of them this month, here's 4 I'd recommend. The Spring with Charity Water, really well done, been there a long time. The Supply with One Mission, they've got a monthly donor program that you get this sense of belonging. A-Team, that's what is the example here. They say our monthly giving partners are an elite group of individuals opening doors of access for people with disabilities around the world. So this is like, hey, we're a group. We are doing something together. And I'll tell you, I'm one of their partners, and I've got their, I can't see myself, but they're one of their stickers, and they do things to say, hey, you're a part of us. And I really feel like I'm a part of that team. Also, IJM, Freedom Partners. So there are 4 really good examples. I'd say go check them out. I'm out of time. I should be giving you time to talk, so I'll quickly hit these last couple. Check your auto responses, update them. So what that means is when a donor gives on your site, what happens? So, literally on your site, once they hit give, this is what you can practice when you give, and you practice giving, or you ask one of your close friends or family member to be a guinea pig for you. Find out what happens after you give. Does something pop up on the screen to say thank you? You're making a difference. What happens in that immediate moment once they hit give? So check that. If you can create an auto response, that's something I would look at. What do your donors get after they give a gift? So what's the receipt they get? What's the email that follows up that says you gave to our organization and thank you? What kind of follow-up then do those people get? So this is longer term, not just from the email of what they gave. What do you do after someone gives to you? And what's the next steps of connecting to them? So these are things that we do have a lot more information that you can follow up on if you want to talk about that. But think about those things this month is what are your auto responses, and do some updating on that. Don't forget to include thank yous, and for them as a donor, what's next? So someone gives, what's next? Do you have a newsletter? What do you want them to do after they give? How do they stay connected? So don't forget some of those things. Last thing, number 8, your team. Not the least, probably one of the most important this month, focusing on your team. Who is on your team? I really would say don't go at this by yourself. Many hands make the work lighter. We all know the sayings that go with that. Invest in helping others contribute with you in this process. Minimally, your board. I really want to encourage you, and didn't see it as much on the plans for round 1. Many people saying, I'm going to go to my board. Almost on every foundational application, people will ask what percentage of your board are giving this year? And if your board's not giving, they should be a good starting place. So they should be a part of you with this. Major gifts, people that have done major gifts in the past, even volunteers and champions. Who's on your team to help make this thing done? So think this month about building that team. So there's your checklist: donor data, tracking system, right communication channels, easy to give page, stories, monthly donor program, auto responses, and your team. Those are things you need to do to get ready. So really the big question is, which of those do you need to work on this month? And if you say all of them, what are your priorities? Start with what's your top two. You don't have to, eat the elephant in one bite. You do have a month. That's why we've given you a month to say, where do you want to start? What is this that you need to be focused on? So really want to challenge you to do that. And just kind of as we wrap up this particular part, what are your top two? Feel free to unmute yourself. When you think, I'll even go back on that. Where do you want to start? What are the things that on this checklist, you're like, I really need to work on this month? Anyone want to chime in?
I'll jump in.
Go for it, DJ.
The idea of that page that you showed, the spring of the monthly program, the idea, because game life with the game theme, I'm thinking of developing something like become a game changer, and that's a specific part of that, a monthly program. I'll need to do some more research, but just that sense of being a part of something more versus just, could you contribute monthly?
Yeah, I love it. That's one key. I didn't highlight it here. I will highlight it later on this month. That giving a good name that connects, you do notice that those people, that is like Charity Water, theirs is about the spring. So what is a spring to water cleanly, having clean water? A spring gives you clean water. So they got that. The supply, one mission, they build houses. So the supply is the group where they're going to get a lot there. The A team, they were Accessible Hope. They're creating access. So they called it the A team with a play on the old model. We know what the A team was if you're anyone that's older than 40 right now, or watch reruns. Freedom Partners, IJM is about dealing with justice mission. So they're dealing with sex trafficking issues, setting people free. So Freedom Partners. So they all do have names that connect to these, to their what they're actually trying to do. And they are creating language. So we are going to be talking about that this month. So feel free to develop it. But when we get into that, we're going to go down to the nitty gritty and get down to a lot more details that'll help you build a really good, strong program. So DJ, thanks for sharing that, and be excited to see how becoming a game changer will be helpful for you. Anyone else want to share some of what you want to be focused on for this on your checklist?
I think the stories of the transformed lives would be a good one. We've done that before, but as I'm thinking of it, it's been a good 1.5 to 2 years since we've done that last, and we have a few of them. So I think that would be a good, since we already have it made, I think that would be a good one to be able to utilize for this.
Yeah. One of the most powerful things you can do is tell a story of how people's lives have changed. And so spending energy,
Right.
and I'm saying 1 to 2 good stories, maybe up to 5 if you want to do that, but having those few in your back pocket to share with people, they will say more than all the other messages you'll try to share with them about the good work that you're doing. So good. I love it. We'll look forward to hearing and seeing some of your stories, Jeremiah. All of you have stories. We know that is true. So the question is, where do you start? Who can you tell them? How do you tell them? We will talk about that, because in some of your cases, some of the information is very private. And so there are ways to tell stories that even protect the people that you are serving. And so there are some helpful hints on that as well. Okay, well, then we're going to move to our second topic. So thank you all for joining in that. This topic is part 2 of a topic we started before we even did the applications, which if you did or didn't see that, you could go back to it and look at it, because in part 1, we did some things. We talked about laying out your overall plan. We talked about beginning with the end in mind, talked about building a team, gave some examples of how teams have been built in the past. We talked about the importance of prayer in your planning process and throughout the whole thing. And then we looked at approach, strategy, and process. And really, we emphasized approach and strategy in that first one because you were writing your application. And in the application, you have to share your approach and your strategy to accomplish round 1 and round 2. Is how are we going to meet the match in round 1? What's my strategy? What are we going to do? Now we're going to talk about process. That's what our focus is going to be on this time. And so that's kind of the nitty gritty. Like, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it? And thinking down into the level of detail, because you've already outlined the approach and the strategy. And just a reminder, you do want to make sure that you have your application out, that you remember it, because that's what you on your application said, I'm going to do. Does that mean you can't do anything else? No, you can. I mean, there's always a God factor in it. There's always a learning process in it. But to the best of your ability, you've thought that through up till now. And I would say start there and see where God leads. And then, as you get down into the process, you might have to make some adjustments to that. So we highlighted the end of that was, what are the actual fundraising skills, tools, systems that you want to be focused on? That was one of the things we said. And in addition to the fact that at the end of this grant, you're going to have $10,000 or more. What do you want to have in terms of fundraising skills, systems, and tools? So, we just went through a checklist of what you need to be working on this month. But I want you to think, like, in December, what skills, systems will have you gained? What do you want to have coming out of this process? And so it's a similar question to like what you're going to work on that we just talked about, but thinking about that. And I asked a special guest to come on today, and she jumped on. And I want to introduce you to one of the leaders who really took every opportunity last year to gain new skills, tools, and systems. And she not only excelled in the program and met the goal, but she went beyond that. And so I want to introduce you to Sherry. Sherry just turned on her camera. And so Sherry, why don't you just say hello, and that way people will see you on their video. And then I'm going to do a little bit more of an intro and then kick off and give you some time to share.
Hey there, everybody. Oh, I wave.
So this is Sherry. Sherry is the executive director for Mercy Ministries here in downtown Phoenix. And not only is she, you can see that she didn't just come into the end of our time and celebration together, but she brought her team, or at least a small portion of her team, because Sherry had a very large team, and it took that, and their results were they actually added 44 new donors. Total of 50 donors participated in it, and then raised over $24,000. And Sherry, we want to give you an applause because she won one of the extra awards that you heard about in terms of one of the largest new donors in there. So we applaud you for all that hard work. You did a phenomenal job. And want to just turn this over to you, Sherry. So do you remember what it was like when you were starting your microgrant last year? Share a little bit of that in your experience with us.
Yeah, I'm glad to. The microgrant process was really a wonderful thing, a process for us. So I'm really glad to just take a couple of minutes and share. I will share that when we first got invited to do the microgrant, I was super excited because we were at a place as a ministry and 501c3 that we were needing to raise more monies. And so the timing of it really felt to be God's timing. And so we're so excited. And then some other things happened. And I also remember when we first started on our first call, I was kind of in tears because I also came into this after that initial excitement with feeling overwhelmed by ministry and almost felt like I was a little bit burning out. And so thankfully, I got prayed for on that first call and super supported, and God just really showed up in an amazing way to the point that this year, looking back, I'm pretty amazed about how encouraged my heart still is and how excited I am about the ministry that we get to be a part of. So very, very thankful. I can just share a few highlights. I will say that for us as a ministry, the Lord really used the microgrant process to really breathe new life into us as a ministry and helped us to go forward. We were at the first round that Monday of when the first round was due by that Friday, and we still needed like I think another $1,250. But sharing the excitement that the Lord was bringing to me, sharing that with our board, they got excited about the opportunity that we were being given. And that first meeting on that Monday ended with just the encouragement for us to invite 5 other people and to hop onto a Zoom call to be able to share with them about this microgrant opportunity. And those individuals weren't like new to us. They were people that were already invested into us in some way, either personally or as a ministry. And so we were just taking the opportunity to share this microgrant with them. I will say that our goal for the microgrant process, and I have written it down, so I want to share those things with you because those are things that we learned from Jonathan and Heather that really grew with us and stuck with us. First was just building capacity, that we wanted to bring others with us. It's easy to do ministry solo, but we knew that if this was going to be a long-lasting thing, that we had to find a way of getting others to come alongside. The other was generosity. Just the generosity of God and being able to share that through the ministry. Another big one for us was relationships, to the point where money was the byproduct in a lot of ways, that we really wanted to focus on the relationships with the people that we were connecting with. And then the other was just really trusting and relying on God and doing it through prayer. So when we did that initial Zoom call, we had about maybe 25 people that joined us, which was pretty amazing because we invited them on Monday and they were there available on Wednesday. But sometimes last minute pressure works kind of good, and it worked well. So we just took the opportunity on that call, just real briefly. We welcomed, we did share a story. Someone helped us to develop a video. So we shared a 2-minute video, and then we explained the direction that we were heading as a ministry, with what work we were going to do, and then how the grant was just the perfect timing for that. We left with some action steps, and we did a follow-up right after that call through an email. And we ended up, even though we were looking for, I think $1,200 on that call, we ended up with a matching part of like $10,000 total. So the Lord just really showed up in a great way. And
so can I interrupt you
yes,
for 1 second?
Sure, please.
Well, so that round 1, your plan was, to talk to some people. You did that. You got about halfway there. And then this whole shift happened. And that wasn't originally part of your plan to have this Zoom call. And it certainly wasn't with 25 people. Is that right?
No, that was never even a thought. We had just thought we would go to people who've already been giving to Mercy Ministries and ask them. And then it was one of our board members that suggested the idea of doing the Zoom call. And we did work really hard. We said we'd keep it to 30 minutes. And so, yeah, that was something unexpected and really made the difference, because then those people kind of became like what we call our inner circle of partners that helped us through the microgrant process.
So you created a team, you were coming to a loan, you're coming to it partly burnout, you had your board engaged in it, but that team grew from that size to about 25 people. And then you more than matched your round 1. So that shifted. God, I know how you guys function. You guys were prayerful, and it just was like a God idea that came through your board to do something different, which opened it up in a brand new way. So that's the plan shifted, and then you kept that group together throughout, and they were kind of your people that were going to help you be successful, and that group continued, your inner circle, to be a part of getting the grant done completely through the whole thing. Is that right? Okay, am I summarizing it?
You summarized it perfectly.
Yes. So were there other ways that God led you that were surprising along the way?
No, I just remember the Lord providing people that were super willing to help us. I mean, we had someone that offered to do a video, and our website individuals were super helpful. Just people really were so generous with their time and availability to help us follow through. And then there were a few people that were willing to share about the microgrant with ones that they knew. So God was just really faithful through the process. If I could go ahead.
Yeah, let me say this one thing and then you share that. You're one of the reasons, as well as a number of others that said the same thing, that we needed a round 0, because you were trying to do all that at the same time that you only had 2 weeks to do round 1. So you were trying to do everything, build, work on your website, work on your video, all that stuff at the same time as you're doing all this. So thanks to Sherry and a few other voices, we now have a round one season. We have a month, and then we also gave a little longer for round one to go. So you helped us shift this program in a positive way. Yeah, so go ahead and share. Sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, no, I wanted you to. I just would say overall, the thing that is still making a difference for us, the microgrant process helped us so much with things that are easy to put to the side and never do. Things like updating a website, things like updating a giving page, like all the things that are easy to not focus on. So super thankful for that. And the other thing that I appreciated that's still making a difference is just getting some practical how-tos, even in how we're communicating with people. It's easy to want to do like a word dump and tell everybody everything about everything. And just the learning how to do it in smaller chunks to give people something and then giving them more as we go along. And that's been something that's been super helpful. And I think Heather reminded me, because she was my coach, that it's okay to take a break. I wrote this down: rest and trust God. Like you can't just work like all the time. Ultimately, at some point, it really is in God's hands. And I'm very excited for those of you that are going through the process, and I pray that the Lord really blesses you with the financial resources that you need, but also just what he wants to do in your own heart and life in the process. For me, I struggled with perfectionist drivenism. That's what I would call it. And the Lord, I can see, has really been bringing some changes in my heart that are bringing some deeper joy to me and doing ministry, that this microgrant process God used to help surface those things and kind of shave off some stuff. So I pray that whatever it is for you, that the Lord will just encourage you, and as he takes care of you in the ministry, that he'll take care of you personally. So that's really what I wanted to share, is a word of encouragement for you. You're in good hands.
You are
with a great team.
You are an encourager, and we appreciate that. Any advice you want to give this group? Something that, is kind of like, if you wish you would have known that when you started the last time.
Well, I would say just Jonathan and Heather are great resources, so don't hesitate to ask them questions. Found in both of them, Heather was my personal coach, but either through both of them, just a real willingness to be helpful. And that was, I just wouldn't hesitate to do that. And just look for the people around you that are already interested or a part of your ministry in some sort of way, and invite them into that process a little bit more. And so I would just say, start with where you are and ask God and prayerful dependence on him.
Yeah, I think you guys did such a great job of incorporating others right into the process. And I remember the Zoom call thought and idea, and putting that out on Monday and thinking, is anyone going to come to this? and right, just an incredible response, which I think shows that people are wanting to help, and they're looking for opportunities, right, to help the organization raise more money, get to the next level. And then that sort of just became a group that stayed together in a lot of ways, right? Mm-hmm. And was a source of not just giving, but encouragement as well. That's so right. Yeah, you ended up with a great result that tested your faith and patience at times as well.
Oh, I would say that for sure. Nothing moves as fast as I thought it would. Expectations are pretty high, and being okay with it taking a little bit longer, and that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And watching you having gone through this, and I've seen this in a lot of other leaders, is that God loves to join us in it, but he's not in a rush like we are. And so sometimes we try to get ahead of God. And if we can go in his pace, and I watched God pull you back. It wasn't anyone else, but Sherry, you see it, you have a plan, you want to move forward. And God he did exactly what your heart was. And I don't think you had those words right up front for all of your goals, but as you went, it became clearer and clearer. It was about relationships. It became clearer and clearer. It was about the team. It was about waiting till God moved in people's hearts, and how do we engage him? And so, in this time, when we talk about process and planning, it's one thing to have a plan. It's another thing to take the steps and to trust God in that process. And I think you did that in a beautiful way. and so grateful that you were willing to come on and share that today. And if you're able to stay on, would love to have you even chime in on some of these other things we're going to look at with planning.
Sure.
So thank you, Sherry. Yeah,
Sherry, would you do us a favor and just put your email in the chat box for
Sure.
us? And then Renee, Luke, DJ, Jeremiah, really anybody listening to this call, if you have some follow-up questions for Sherry, I'm sure she'd be just happy to answer those for you and help in any way she can. So feel free to reach out. Thank you, Sherry.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to.
Yeah, she's great at sharing what she's gaining. So part of this idea of planning is we do encourage you, instead of trying to take the whole thing and jump at it right away. And we've already got emails of people that are, further down the road and they're ready to go. But it's to take the time given so that you can grow in this capacity, not just get her done. I am a get her done person. Many leaders are a get her done, but I keep saying it, this is capacity building as well. So if you can get her done now, imagine if you invest some of the time on those things that Sherry highlighted that often get overlooked, how much more that will help you down the road. So you have that time. So what are some of these milestones? Well, we broke it down already for you. It's like round zero. We already listed what things should you be looking at for your systems and tools. You've got a checklist. What is it you want to be able to work on and do in that time period? What needs to be created? What needs to be evaluated? What needs to be updated? Who should be the people that are involved in that process? What do they need to do and when do they need to do it? So once you are in this round one, you're looking at, this is the time to set all that up. And to be able to think about, and as Jonathan said, to attend these mini trainings to gain some additional skills. So don't be in a rush that because we talked about having my monthly donor program, you have to have that tomorrow. You've got this month and we've got some training coming up, but who needs to be a part of that? And who will be the ones that will take the initiative on that? That's the stuff you can plan in this round one time. So I would encourage you, take as little as 30 minutes just to look through the mini training schedule, look at the fundraising checklist, and to just really start to outline what are the things that in round one need to be done, when do they need to be done, and who should be the key person taking that lead. So again, that's meaning if you're building your team as part of round one, who's going to lead that? And then you start to do those other things. And we're going to work on messaging this month. So don't feel like you have to be in a rush to have all the answers to that. This is about building. So round one is about that. Here is an example that I'm going to share with you that is one person's way of tracking a plan and making the process listed out here. And I know you can't read it, but I'm going to send this same document to you later. But what I highlighted here is, in round one, they listed, okay, create my team and my overall plan. They've got 5 or 6 things to be done, when they were going to be done, who's going to get them done. But then they had this communication plan. And now they're saying, what am I going to need to use to communicate? So they're looking at, how am I going to do my round one ask? Can I outline that? Who's in charge of that? What are some of the things I'm going to do? They included into this a prayer team, adding their monthly donor program to their prayer team group. They talked about a cover letter because they used direct mail. And so they had needed to outline that cover letter in this time period. They looked at LinkedIn, Facebook messages. They talked about their banner on their website they were going to change. They looked at a video. So they were thinking through, what do we need to do in our communication for round one and round two in round one? So that's what the things that they were thinking about. So thinking through what needs to be done this month and then making a plan. I'll send you this Excel spreadsheet that you could use if you want. Some of you have systems that you have project management tools or use sticky notes or whatever your system is, thinking through things according to each of these milestones. Round one begins and ends in a time period. And then working on, what it looks like. What do you want to do this month? So thinking through that checklist even. So another milestone is round two, which starts in September. So we've said you can do this any way you want. We also have seen that investing those people that are your leadership to say, who are those people you want to talk with? Who are the leaders that you want to bring into this? As Sherry said, your inner circle. So that could be your board. It could be big donors, it could be champions, it could be volunteers. Sherry, with your mix, when you invited those people in, we know you had your board, but who were some of those other people to you? Were they volunteers? Who were they?
Yeah, they were some people from our own church, which our 501c3 is under. They were church partners that are connected to our church, and then personal family and friends.
Yeah. So thinking about who are the people you want to approach, and how do you want to approach them? Do you want them to be feeling like they're a part of the leadership of this? Do you want to have face-to-face meetings? Sherry went and did, last minute, we're going to pull together a Zoom meeting. And it worked, it wasn't necessarily Jonathan or Mai's like, oh, that's a great idea on a Monday to try to do on a Wednesday, but it was a God idea and it worked. So there's lots of ways to do that, but what's the medium that you want to use? What's the platform for that, for your messaging for round one? What are the messages? How do you want to say it? We have some messaging that we're going to talk about this month. You have an entire month to do round one. So that means you don't have to actually have all your asks done in week one. You could work on messaging in week one. So just so you know, it doesn't necessarily take an entire month to get the money, but it does take an entire month to work on that process. So think about what you want to be working on in round one. Messaging. How are you going to engage prayer in that? How do you help people understand? Part of the rule of round one is to say, fundraising is everyone's job, not just you as an executive director. Who's everyone? Who needs to be a part of this idea of raising up new donors across your organization? So some of you might be doing events, some of you might be doing face-to-face. It can look different, but the planning is still important. So who, what, and when in each of these different sections. So round two, that's October through November. Again, you don't have to kick it off in messaging in October 2nd. You can spend a week or two getting your ducks ready for round two, taking a breath, praying, bringing your leadership group together, getting them ready, equipped to do it. But you have those 2 months. And we're saying, what does multi-channel communication look like of communicating across a variety of channels to gain new donors? So how do you increase your awareness and you engage people in new ways? How do you incorporate prayer into this round? Do you want to use an event? There are a number of people that have done events in round two, whether it's a dinner, dessert, all kinds of different events. And then we have this, and we wrapped it around Giving Tuesday. So Giving Tuesday really is an opportunity to utilize this mindset of, okay, it started with, was it Black Friday? And then it was Monday is technology, I don't remember what it is. And then Giving Tuesday, that's the one I know. That's when people start to say, okay, well, we bought a bunch of stuff. Then we went, Cyber Monday. Then we started focusing on all our technology. Now, what about giving? And so somebody smart in the world created Giving Tuesday. And a lot of people think about giving on that day. So how do we utilize that as a nonprofit? So this is part of your year-end strategy for fundraising, which that statistically people can give anywhere from 60 to 90% in year end of their giving happens in these last couple of months. So it's a critical strategic time. So when you think about this, what's the best way for you? Okay, so continuing down, this is that sample planning sheet, and I will share that with you. So just, think about, how do you plan? What is the way? We had one group that put it on a huge whiteboard, and it was in the executive director's office. Everyone knew it. There's people that are using online systems. I love Sherry's method: pray and follow God and hold on. She did a lot of writing it down, but it changed. It shifted as she followed God. So keeping up with God sometimes is a little challenging when you're committed to trusting him, which she did a phenomenal job with. Any Any thoughts, Sherry, that you want to add on, how you kind of organize the who, the what, and the when?
No, we did do a spreadsheet like that. It's just that we got onto other things, but no, I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, spreadsheets are good. They're helpful. And if it's something that other people can see and they go, oh, my name's on it, I'm responsible for this, just make sure your name's not the only name on it. So that's kind of wrapping this up here. Jonathan, Sherry, any final words before we open it up for lingering questions or insights or comments?
I would just add that everyone's journey through microgrants is a little bit different, right? And it plays out differently. And so that's okay. And this is a program that lasts a few months intentionally. And that just creates time and space for different aspects of learning and setting up your nonprofit work for future success, even after microgrants is over. And trust me, over the past few years when we've done it, we've seen people get to the goal in a lot of different ways. But one thing's been a constant, and that is at the end, it's pretty evident to see how God's worked in it. And there's a story there, and there's encouragement there. And really, right, it's God that brings the growth, right? We plant, we water, God brings the growth. And I think we see that through microgrants. We have seen it over the past few years. So just don't think, man, this is how it's going to be and everything's going to work out perfectly. And I'm going to hit this on this date and this on this date and all that. You may not. And that's okay. Just remind yourself that God's at work in the process, and we're here to help you as well. So
that reminds me of the great Proverbs that is, man plans his way, God orders his steps. So it's not wrong to plan, but
That's
we
right.
have to hold it with open hands and let God, engage with us, direct our steps, and watch him do beyond what we could ever ask or imagine. And that we've seen. And, there are some stories we can share about God just, in one person's words, showing off, doing what could never be imagined. So, Sherry, anything from you that you want to add and thoughts on planning here?
I just want to piggyback off of Jonathan. I do think everyone's experience is different. I think for me personally, as a super planner, likes everything down on paper, I think God just was stretching me personally to let go of some of that, to be able to really grow and trust in him. But for others, it might be opposite. So it's just how the Lord was working in me to let go of some of that real hard, detailed planning to be able to grow and trust. But I'm excited for the group, to how God's going to stretch each person and his faithfulness to provide what he knows is needed. And just that I'm thankful for the tools that we learned that have still served us well through till now. So.
Amen. Well, and there's no other leader out there that leans more on their structure and their plans. I'm sure nobody has that problem in a group of leaders that are all get or done people. So I'm being sarcastic. Yes, what you experience is very much a common reality for leaders. It's easy to, we know what to do, we know how to do it, and letting God into that is a challenge. So I'm going to stop sharing and just open it up. Any comments? I know we are at the top of that hour and a little past it, but would love to engage you if you want to. And if you need to go, feel free to do that.